In terms of stressful performances, I'd say no one has been more of a disaster than Carlos Carrasco. In his first two starts combined, the 36-year-old right-hander has posted 8.2 innings pitched, 10 hits, 11 earned runs, 3 home runs allowed, 7 walks, and just 5 strikeouts. The biggest concern was raised in the 5th inning last week against Milwaukee when Carrasco's fastball velocity dropped to a consistent 88 to 89 miles per hour. Although there are no health worries that we know, Carrasco went on to claim his concern with the new pitch clock, saying that it's crazy, I only have 15 seconds, and it could be a strong reason for recent fatigue in older pitchers. As said, Carrasco's next start against Miami yesterday was no better, with his fastball having the same concern, dropping below 90 miles an hour almost a dozen times in 5 innings pitched.
It's been batting practice. I mean, you look at the Marlins, and yeah, they're an improved offense. They're still not a great offense. But, again, they're murdering, and we all saw what happened in Milwaukee. This is a point, I don't know how much longer you can just leave him out there just every 5th day. You're pretty much just putting an L because you're going to be down 3-0 in the first inning, and you're already climbing out of the hole in the first. But the excuse of, now, I have 15 seconds of the pitch clock. Every team and every pitcher has to deal with it. I don't want to hear the excuse. You're not the only one who has the new pitch clock. Everybody's got it. And yeah, have there been some complaints? But nobody's saying, because my velocity's down. No, maybe because you're a 37-year-old pitcher. You never really threw hard. Your command, that was what you were. You were a slider. That's what you are. You were never hitting 97, 98. So at this point, again, you're paying them. So you're going to have to send them out there. And Verlander's going to be at least another couple weeks. So you have him, and you're not going to trade him because nobody was going to want that contract and seeing how he's pitched. You can't just trade him now. So he's under contract. You have him, and the pitching depth is Dylan Bundy, so who isn't that much better than what he is. So at this point, you're stuck with him. Maybe it's hopefully only 2 times through, and Verlander's back. You have Justin take his spot, but again, it's uncompetitive. It's an uncompetitive game when Carrasco's on the mound because every time he sits, it's 3-0. Oh, it's the first inning problems that has been with Carrasco ever since he put a Met uniform on. So, you're paying him, you have him here, nobody wants him, so you're stuck with him. It's your depth, and this just shows how they have not been able to develop any pitching depth because if a competent team with some depth, they wouldn't have him on the roster.
We talked about it a while back, but the decision to keep him, don't worry, they're going to trade him, and they never did, and he ended up being in the rotation no matter what. So they already put themselves in this situation when they decided to pick up that team option instead of, like we said, exploring younger options, trying to get some different arms onto this team, because it's like we said with a lot of the other veterans on this team, as you get older, it only becomes tougher. And like Andrew said, we've seen these problems with the 5th inning, and the same thing happens this last game against the Marlins. He gives up 3 runs in the 5th inning. He has no velocity. He's walking batters. He can't put anybody away. He can't get strikeouts. He's done. He's cooked. It's not going to, all of a sudden, his next start, he's going to have more velocity. He's going to have his stuff again. You're fighting a pointless battle at this point, and you're just going to keep getting beat up like this. And like Andrew said, when you're falling down 5-0 this early with this kind of offense that doesn't answer back with home runs, it's just a very hard recipe to win ball games. And we don't have other options. With McGill already in the rotation, with Pearson already in the rotation, Quintana, he might not come back at any point this year. No matter what, someone's going to have to be in this rotation. And they even, like we talked about, remember a while back, the 6-man rotation, we could barely survive with 5. So we can't even discuss 6-man at all right now. They don't have the depth for that. So it's sad because, Carrasco, he's a good guy. He's been through a lot. But, I mean, if we're in win-now mode with this kind of payroll, he can't be pitching every 5 days. I mean, they got to do something, whether that's trade a young piece or they got to do something. I mean, they've got to try something because I just don't see this getting any better. If anything, it could only get worse because Carrasco, my other big concern is his injury history. I mean, we talk about lack of depth and the injuries this pitching already has. Carrasco, he's just he could go down at any point. We've seen him get hurt every single year that he's been a Met. And as you get older, you're only more injury prone. So it's a shame that it's come to this so early in the season. But again, I mean, based off his performance last year, I just can't see this getting any better. So I wish the Mets would be proactive and actually do something about it now to not let it get worse, and just keep piling up those losses every 5 days. And you had to have Steven Nagosic pitch, who knows how many innings, and he's done for a few days. So now you got no long relief, man, in case anything else goes wrong in these next few days. You have no days off facing the Padres' big-time offense. So you just screwed yourself for a few days by letting this guy pitch today. So it stinks to watch, but, I mean, this is the situation they're in right now. This decision they made, he's a guy we talked about trading while he still maybe had some value. But like Andrew said, with the contract he has right now, you will not get anything for him. He has absolutely zero trade value. It's like almost McCann level trade value where you'd be paying and you get absolutely nothing back just to get him off the roster, which when it comes to starting pitching, you shouldn't have to do that. And again, since the Mets don't have any alternatives, like we talked about so many times, they did not get any depth. They did not get a single pitcher of depth because they lost DeGrom, so they signed Verlander. They lost Bassett, so they signed Senga. It's like we talked about last year. All they did was a bunch of swaps. There was no actual addition. There was no adding extra pieces. All they did was just swap guys out and then leave the rest of them. And now when these things happen, they have no backup plans and they're just stuck. And it's just annoying to watch that they don't have another option.
5 players I dislike for 2023. Carrasco was on there. And there's a reason why he's on there. It's because there's something called a downward slope. And we saw a very vulnerable Carrasco towards the end of the year when he came back from that one minor injury and then he was injured again. And he didn't look like himself. He did not look like himself whatsoever. He didn't look like he was going to put up that quality 3 to 4 run ball, 5 to 6 innings. Then they pick up the option, which was the vested option. They picked that up. I believe they were right to do that. Obviously, didn't have any pitching. So many guys moving in free agency, but they were wrong to not move him. And I can tell you this right now, there's so many reasons why, and I think I'm repeating myself because I think it's easy to say. They have no youth in this rotation. They have 0 youth in this rotation. Your youngest right now, obviously you can talk about, McGill and Peterson both being 27 or whatever, but going into this year, Senga was your youngest one at age 30. There was no youth in this rotation, and you had injuries at the top to try and protect a 40-year-old and a 38-year-old at your number 2. That 40-year-old is already hurt, so that backup plan is already shifted up towards in the rotation. Not to mention, Carlos Carrasco is not in the long-term plans of this franchise. He isn't. He's not coming back next year. If he does, we're going to have a problem, which he most likely will not be. You should have traded something for him. Overall, he made 29 starts. He was durable, somewhat durable last year. You're telling me no stupid team would say, hey, I'll take Carlos Carrasco in the back end of my rotation for a controllable arm? You're telling me you don't want to pull a trigger on that? Got, sub 2-win season, somebody at the back end of your rotation, pitched fairly well for the majority of the season, just had a little bit of injury history. But no, now his value is nothing. And I didn't think that it would come so soon as to where I want this guy off, not in my rotation and not starting whatsoever. But it's come to a point where this guy is horrible to watch. He is unwatchable. He is unplayable. You cannot put him out there to start. He's not going to give you a starter sample. He's going to give you 4 or 5 innings of him just slugging through 5-6 run ball. He looks like crap. His fastball velocity is down 2 miles an hour already this year. He has no command of his slider. It's all over the place. He's walking guys, which he never does. That was something that he always was known to do throughout his career. He's on the downswing. They should have saw this coming. I don't understand why he's still here. I don't understand why they didn't move him. And now they're not going to be able to. It's either they Phantom IL him or they just continue to ride this out, which I know they're going to. They're going to continue to ride it out because Buck Showalter just said he'll be better next time. In my head, I'm like, oh, great. There's going to be a next time where he gives up 5 runs, 6 runs, and doesn't even make it to the 6th inning. Fan-freaking-tastic. He's 36 years old. He's not getting any better. He's not getting any younger. It's come to a point where Carlos Carrasco is not a reliable part to this rotation. I understand he only made 2 starts, but it's not going to get better from here, especially when you've dipped to the level of throwing 88 to 89 mile an hour fastball. Where you phantom IL Carlos Carrasco, because it's a good chance that he's hurt right now. If you're throwing 88 to 89 miles an hour, it's a good chance that he's hurt. And you say, Jose Budo, what do you got? He's pitched okay so far in AAA. Might as well get some youth into the rotation. Something. But we all know that that's not going to happen. And we're going to get another start of Carlos Carrasco. It's just going to feel like a punt game. Like today felt like a punt game, putting Tim LeCastro in the lineup and just benching Nimmo. Bench your best hitter. Bench your leadoff hitter who table sets and is a catalyst for your offense. Again, like I said, with dead weight, they're just coming to a point of where there's too much of it. And it continues to grow. The population continues to grow of dead weight, and they are in a massive situation. And most of this dead weight is old. No youth. No youth whatsoever.
The only trade the Mets could have made would be to get, well, I would have hoped, was just some young arms that have, like, a little bit of potential. They may not have been your traditional, like, sub-3 ERA guys, because nobody was going to give you that for Carrasco. But where is the player development on the Mets? Like, we see all over the league these random out-of-nowhere guys who were out of baseball, who we never heard of, were not big prospects, that they just come to a team and it clicks, and they become this star, this great player, this really useful player. Other than like your McNeil and your DeGrom, like these guys who got drafted super late, we don't see a guy come to the Mets who wasn't very good and all of a sudden just become a star. Like, I can't trust the Mets front office to trade a Carrasco or an Escobar or any veteran you think of for some random young players, and then one of those guys becomes a star. They just haven't done it. They haven't shown me that. They haven't developed it. They have not developed young pitching since all these guys, the DeGrom, the Harvey, the Wheeler. Once those guys left, there's been no youth, no quality young pitching that's been developed that can be like a steady guy in their rotation. They've had to go with these hired arms, Verlander, Scherzer, and they're just going to do the same thing over and over once those guys' contracts expire. And they're going to have to keep getting these old guys because they can't develop their own guys. They drafted Kumar Rocker and then his medicals weren't good and they lost them. So they have not been able to get those quality arms. They keep getting catchers and these other guys who, as right now, they don't have an impact on this team. So they don't have, like I've said a million times, they don't have any pitchers on the horizon. They have no pitchers on the way. Like, this is going to be a continuous problem. Unless they think that they just have the Steve Cohen money, they could just keep signing pitchers and keep signing pitchers, they're never going to get that quality, long-term controllable arms that could be in your rotation for a long time. They don't have that right now. And if they continue to not develop players, they're just going to hold on to these veterans and they will have this dead weight because this front office has not done a good job of trades, so they can't get any other young talent onto this team because they haven't drafted it, they haven't developed it, and they're not going to trade for it either. So they're just going to keep having this problem of just being too old.
We did make a video of 3 teams that could possibly trade for Carlos Carrasco during the offseason, and a lot of those possible return pieces were young guys who are, they kind of flopped at the major league level once they came in, or, they're a little bit lower minor league pieces and they're still young, and it definitely could develop the garden of youth, shall we say, on the Mets that pretty much is completely non-existent. And I can tell you right now from a sub 4 earned run average last year from Carlos Carrasco, right? For $13 million, $14 million that he's making this year. It wasn't hard to move. For some reason, they said, we need this guy. We need a 36-year-old veteran who has shown signs, who has had 2 surgeries just while he's been a part of our franchise in a span of 2 to 3 years, has had 2 major surgeries, a torn hamstring, not a pulled hamstring, a torn hamstring, and elbow surgery. You could have got something for him, and you didn't. Andrew, who were some of those pieces? I forget. There's a few, like Jay Groom was there.
Jay Groom, Josh Taylor, who got traded, Hudson Haskins. We brought Hudson Haskins. We brought a bunch of guys, like young, controllable arms. Who else was in the 10th video? I know we talked about a couple outfielders, but there was, and all the guys we talked about, like Jay Groom, Josh Taylor, ended up getting traded too. So again, Wouldn't it have been nice to have a cheap lefty or can Jake Room just to have a guy in AAA just in case for depth? Of course, that would have been nice, but no, we want to keep getting